Hello world, it is Harper again, and we are here with a fucking hard Lufenia Plus. This one's really hard. I'm looking in here for like a damage dealing friend that would be kind of different. I think I'm looking for Jekt or something. I instead just go with Noel because I need to do big damage fast. There's a lot of things happening in this mission. Let's talk about it. This is Mother Fixation, the Lufenia Plus mission version of it. Lufenia Plus is the hardest type of content you can do in Dissidia Omnia. It involves dealing with enemies that are highly damaging, that have a lot of defensive bonuses to them that make them tankier. And also there's a mechanic where at certain HP thresholds, an orb will appear by the enemies with a number ticking down. In order to prevent that orb from ticking down to 0, you can do special actions that keep on refilling the number, which is good because if that orb hits 0, you instantly die. So there's an instant death criteria in place. Also, in many cases, just getting hit by enemies is enough to either kill you or to damage you enough that you will fail the mission, because generally one of the conditions for getting a perfect result on a Lufenia mission is to avoid taking a certain amount of damage. You also tend to be required to defeat these missions in a certain amount of turns. That's why I've already called out my friend unit, Noel, in order to start doing a lot of big damage very quickly. Noel's thing is that he is able to do damage at the end of his turn once you apply a certain buff, which I did using that attack. And so now I have two hard-hitting characters, or I'm going to have two hard-hitting characters that will be doing, additional damage at the end of their turns, or just hitting hard in general. Noel also has a condition where he breaks enemies. Brave breaking is what happens when you break an enemy's brave. Wow, that's redundant. What is brave? Brave, we talk about this almost anytime I talk about Dissidia, in case you're a newbie who is somehow interested enough to watch a random person's Dissidia video. Brave is all those numbers at the bottom, where like, see where Warrior of Light in the orange right now, it says that, and then out of max. Brave is a sort of metric of numerical value, which represents both defense and offense. The more brave you have, the less likely it is that you are going to get broken. If you do get broken, your turn gets pushed back, and you are defensively weaker. If you have a lot of brave spent up, there are a lot of abilities too that will generate a lot of brave and then dump it, generate and dump it, generate and dump it, because the more brave you have, the more HP damage you will do when you spend it. So it's a resource that is both defense and offense, and the idea is to build it up to avoid breaking and then to cash it out in key moments. It's not as intensely tactical as I make it sound, but it is one of the core things that is unique to the battle system of Dissidia, both the fighting game and the RPG that I'm playing. What makes this a hard Lufenia, though? Well, not just the fact that we need to defeat these enemies really quickly. I think it's around 55 or maybe 65 turns. Not only because they are guaranteed to hit, and so I need to bring along a tank to prevent that, but also just because maintaining the orb condition is going to be tricky without the right character. This Lufenia, sometimes when a Lufenia mission comes out, it's a good idea to bring the character that is released or being run on the gacha banner, because this is a gacha game, along the same time. That happened when we showed off Snowvillier's Lufenia mission, where having snow meant doing ice damage, and he was able to attack on off turns, and that way we would just be refilling the orb automatically, which meant I could have high damaging characters to do a lot of intense stuff. In this case, to refill the orb, we need to do one of two things. Really, we need to do one thing, but we can do it in a variety of ways. We basically need to do damage off turn, which is to say not through an attack that we choose, but through like a debuff or something like that. I am using my Knowles BT+. Burst is a mechanic where you can do a big attack phase that allows you to use all of your attacks at least once and then end with a big finisher. If you upgrade your burst weapon enough, you get to have a BT+, which means you can use that finisher attack every now and then. And doing that applies certain buffs and bonuses. In this case, it's going to be increased damage and a couple of things from using that with Noel. I do that now because my friend unit is gone. We've done a lot of damage, and now I need to start worrying about this orb. If that thing hits 0, especially that one right there on the side, it's a huge problem. It will kill us instantly. So what's the deal? What do I need to do? Well, I've already done it. I took out Ace. This is Ace from Final Fantasy Type 0. He had an attack called Jackpot Triad. That applied something on the enemy called Hole Card, which then applied, once that ticks, it starts a different debuff called a Blind Stud. Or, I don't know if that's the actual debuff name. But what happens is, as long as that debuff is applied, whenever an action is being made, the enemy will then get hit by an HP attack. And of course, the condition for moving this orb upwards is to have damage occur off turn, which is to say, when we are not, it's not me saying, hey, attack, boom, and this happens. It needs to be the result of a status effect or a couple other things. Another option is there's a character called Corleones from Final Fantasy 15. He's able to buddy with another character so that if they are attacked or targeted before the enemy attacks, he will attack that enemy preemptively. That technically will count as off-turn damage too, so he's not a bad choice for this mission as well, but I found that I couldn't really get him to work. Not in the way that I wanted to. It turned out that taking Ace into this mission was the one that really made it special. My brain is jumbled. This originally came out. This is Mother Fixation. This was meant for, or partially meant for Kadaj, who's the villain from Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. Why would Kadaj be interesting and useful in this mission? Well, he doesn't fulfill the orb condition, but what he does is he applies a debuff that limits the amount of brave generation that the enemies can take. These enemies are guaranteed to hit me. I can't stop them from doing it. Every now and then they're going to get an attack on me. But if that attack is of a certain, if they have enough brave, it stops being a damaging attack and it actually petrifies one of my characters, and that's bad. That's real bad. You can see right there, that gauge, that big red bar refilled once they hit 49%. That's just a mechanic of the fight. So in order to survive that, I need to have a tank. I tried using Gladio from Final Fantasy 15 for this fight. He is able to kind of like intercede and cover for another character, and he has ways to negate all damage that he takes, but it just wasn't working. So we went with the OG Final Fantasy hero right there in the center with a nice alternate skin to make him a little bit like the sprite from the original games. It is the Warrior of Light. What he does is he just has attacks that straight up create a barrier that have, for all intents and purposes, their own brave pool. The enemy attacks those, and then only once those barriers have taken enough damage do the characters take damage. Which is great, that's wonderful, that's exactly what I need, because I can't avoid these attacks. It was hard. This is an incredibly hard Lufenia. I think around the time this came out, it was also meant maybe to be done with, I think Final Fantasy II, there's a character called Maria who might have been involved with this one. I'm in a Discord for this game because why not? We all have our weird passions in life, and I sit down and I let a lot of content pass. I don't always say to myself, well, what I need to do in my mobile games is to be up to date all the time. Sometimes it's like, I didn't play this game for like 2 months, and I came back and I had all these puzzles to solve, right? Which is really cool. And when I said, hey, I just did Kadaj's Lost Chapter, his like side story, people were like, oh, that one sucked. And the answer is it does suck. It took me a lot of time to figure out how to do this, partially because making sure that I could survive that damage, making sure that I could do enough damage over time, making sure I could fulfill the orb condition, right? It's a lot of things to juggle. It's a really satisfying puzzle once you get it down, but I don't begrudge anybody who looks at Lufenia Plus and says like, fuck this. Some of them are really bullshit. It's getting easier now that some characters are able to hit level 90. That's what my Noel is right now. He's level 90. He also has something called an Ultima weapon. You've played Final Fantasy, you know Ultima weapons. It's also just there in the name, Ultima. Hardcore, badass, super cool weapon. Even the most basic Ultima weapon is unupgraded, better than a fully upgraded burst weapon. So just having that is great. So Noel right now is like one of my best damage dealers. My other Ultima weapon carrier is Sid from Final Fantasy VII, or really anybody who can equip a spear, because I do have an Ultima weapon spear. I have an Ultima weapon dagger as well. Turns out I didn't mean to click, and I accidentally made a dagger. So once a character who uses the dagger pops up and gets to level 90 and can use Ultima weapons, I'll give that to them. I need to pay real close attention. This is the thing that makes this fight so fucking hard. I need to pay really close attention to my blind stud debuff, which is to say that it ticks only for a certain amount of time. I believe it lasts, 5 turns max, which means 5 actions. Looking at it there, what does it look like? Yeah, no, I know it actually looks like 6 maybe. I might be wrong. It's hard for me to really tell. This is a test. I wanted to see what would happen. Because Noel can do follow-up attacks, he has an attack that can basically shave off any target's brave right away. So I thought those attacks are basically like freebie attacks. If I have an extra damage follow-up, maybe I'll do damage. Turns out I don't. The reason why it's so fucking hard to make sure that this orb doesn't fuck me over is because Blind Stud will run out. I only have a certain amount of opportunities to apply Whole Card and then by extension Blind Stud. But there is some good news for that, which is that when you use Jackpot Triad, the attack that grants this condition, it turns Ace's normal HP attack into a variation called HP plus Blind Stud Turn, which means it will reapply Blind Stud. So I have 5 turns left of Blind Stud on the enemy to the right and 1 on the enemy to the left. Anytime that Blind Stud is going off, the orb is getting ticked up. So I'm in a decent shape, and when the time comes, I can just use my normal HP attack to reapply the buff. Also, anytime that thing's ticking, it's doing damage. One of the nice things about in like an orb condition that's like do damage off turn in order to tick up this orb. It means I just get to do more damage, which is really, really cool. So, I have a character who's applying a debuff that's doing damage anytime an action is being taken. I have a character who has a self-applied buff that is doing additional damage at the end of their turns, who's already very spiky with their damage, both because of being higher level and having a very quality weapon. I have a tank that can, while maybe not dish out the most damage, whereas, you know, I think if I had Gladio in here, Gladio can sometimes do a decent amount of damage. Warrior of Light does basically assure me that I don't need to worry about ever taking damage, or that if I do, it's going to be so minimal that when his EX ability, which think Limit Break, right, every now and then, the meter ticks up and you can do another big special attack. His will do a little bit of healing to the party. Not a lot, but enough to cover like small issues. So, what I've been doing in here is pretty standard. Well, not standard. It took way too many tries to like figure out the right composition, right? Because ultimately, while the execution aspect is a concern, like for instance, right, like if I mess up my execution with Ace during this fight, I just lose. But a lot of what matters here is also finding the team composition that works for you. Sometimes those are really obvious, right? You'll see in the Snow Lufenia, if I haven't already posted it, just having Snow in the party meant, you know, he's a tank who can attack off turn, do ice elemental damage, and then another condition of that fight was anytime we were taking damage but the damage was mitigated, we were also ticking up the orbs. So just having that dude in the party solved like 99% of the, you know, the math problem, really. And that meant I could have, I think it was Null and Machina, just beat the shit out of the other enemies, which was really fun. Sometimes you just want that sort of thing. This was harder. This was like, I had a bunch of characters that could fulfill the necessary like individual conditions, but putting them into a configuration that worked for me and made sense for me and my executional limits was important. Because some people play this game intensely and do challenge runs. In the Discord I'm in, sometimes there are challenge runs where they say, hey, do only these special conditions and for a month you'll get a special bit of flair in the Discord or something, and that's kind of cool. There's, you know, I saw there's a new Lufenia out right now, and somebody did a FF10 themed version of it where they ran a party with Pain, Orin, and Tidus. I'm going to try and do that Lufenia Plus, but I probably won't do that configuration, although I might take along Pain. Pain's a cool character who I want to show off. Where she stands in your party determines on a condition that will show off whether or not she will give you buffs or debuff the party, or a mixture of both. So like if she's standing on the right side of the field, she'll debuff the enemy. If she's standing on the left side of the field, she'll buff your party. It's kind of cool. The condition for that orb for that fight is to dispel beneficial conditions from the enemy. So but that one seems really hard as well. So you know, we'll see. I say as I kind of stumble over my words, but now I need to double check. I need to really look. Right, I have 3 turns of just normal blind stud, which means that I can get away not applying jackpot triad for a little bit longer. But you know, I gotta be really careful. And also, I believe the turn limit for this is 55. So we have 10 turns to get these 2 enemies down from the last remaining 17% of their HP to death. We must defeat them in that turn, in that amount of time. Now, you know, Noel is so bursty, like sincerely so bursty, partially because of the ultimate weapon, but just because of how he's built, that like, you know, we just went from 17 to 13 in like one attack basically, right? And so that's pretty fine. But now we've reached the point where I need to apply the stud one more time. The good news is that you know, there's basically no scenario where the orb will reach 0 before I fail the fight anyway, which is to say that because the orb is going to be ticking up and maxing up at around like, you know, 10 turn, you know, an orb count of 10 or 15 or 12 or something, right? Like in that general ballpark, 11 right now. But it will be 12 very shortly. Boom, boom, boom. And there'll be 13 here. I only have 5 turns, I believe. Maybe 5 to complete it. And at most, maybe I actually have the full 15. I forget the actual turn count here. But the point is that I've reached the point where the orb doesn't matter so much as my raw DPS is going to become a very sincere condition. We're going to see something happen here soon, which is that as part of the burst effect that I gained when I used Ace's BT plus, eventually he'll get an extra special attack once the burst effect ends that will do some nice stuff. I'm not gonna outline every single thing that his burst effect does, but basically anytime I'm using somebody's burst effect, imagine extra brave gain, extra damage output, sometimes a couple of other really esoteric things, but those are the basic ones, right? Like, you want to use those finishers. The reason why BT plus characters are so powerful is because you get to very often and continually apply buffs that are surely quite powerful. Looking at it, it can't be 55 then. This must be a 65 turn situation. But yeah, so we get this right here. This is the end of his burst effect taking place. If you've not played Type 0, it's actually quite a good game, if a little clumsy to play. But that was the case with another game made by the same director, which was Crisis Core, because those games were made by Hajime Tabata, who also did Final Fantasy 15. He's the one who came in and closed the deal on that. So yeah, so this is a 65 turn mission then. So we had a little bit more time, but now it's like do or die. We should be able to do it, right? But this is how the shaving slash should have worked, by the way. Is that? I was messing it up before. Thankfully, we're gonna get this one. This was a hard fucking fight, man. This was like learning how to find the right tank that would really protect against those attacks was key, and it turns out you just take the tank that will give you the biggest shields, right? But the orb thing was a lot trickier than I thought it would be. I thought taking in core from FF, there it is, from FF, there's the turn count, from FF 15 would have been good, because he can be very damaging, but he wasn't giving me what I needed. And there were times where like my damage was behind or my orb stuff was falling behind. Now we have a big finisher with an EX attack and then the break type deal. Should finish the fight, right? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this one was hard. This is one of the hardest that I've done in a long while. But rewarding. I do like solving the puzzle. So there you go. Mother Fixation. We've done it. See you around, friends. That one was really fucking hard.